DiSTRiCT, you know the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offer's the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice, from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT DiSTRiCT, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man, y'all know what to do. It's the... And I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.
What is up, Fantasyland? We are back in the DiSTRiCT for the money weeks, and we bring you a star-studded evening tonight for a very special high-stakes roundtable. Dan, we haven't done one of these in the DiSTRiCT in a very, very long time. Before I pass it to you so you can give these gentlemen, these fine gentlemen, the proper introduction they deserve. Guys, remember to smash the like button. We're here every Tuesday night, 9:30 live via the Player Profiler Network. We welcome you if this is your first one. I mean, you hit the jackpot. Because, Dan, we're going to help the people get ready for the money weeks right here tonight. We got an hour and a half approval from the bosses upstairs so we can pick brains proper. Guys, leave the comments, your questions. We want you guys in the chat. Dan, take it away. Walk these men in proper.
All right, yeah, we are very thrilled to be able to get such a star-studded lineup together, and I'm going to go in the order that's on the screen because trying to pick an order out of these guys for anything is pretty darn tough. All I know is if I'm sitting in a draft room with these guys, I'm not seeing the I'm not seeing the mark there, so I know it's probably me. But we got some great guys here. We'll start with Chris Vaccaro, and Chris is an NFFC Hall of Famer, has won national competitions there. I forget if it was primetime, was it?
It was.
Okay.
Primetime, yep, took that down overall. Luckily enough to get that one, Dan.
And that's a big accomplishment for sure. And then we have Billy Wazowski, who just a couple of years ago took down the RotoWire OC Championship, which is the kind of mid-stakes version, very similar to the primetime, but just more people to beat. And so it's a tough way to get there as well. Billy is also an NFFC Hall of Fame member, and so welcome, Billy.
Appreciate it. Good to be here. This is gonna be fun tonight. Looking forward to this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then we have Nelson Sousa, who's won the FFPC. That was that the main event or the football guys?
The main event.
Main event, yeah. Okay. And so huge one there. Nelson is, like all these guys, has just won so many like standalone league titles that are 5K, 10K, all that kind of stuff. As well as these national competitions. So it's an amazing group that we have here. I don't want to spend too much time talking about them, though, because we all want to start talking about football. And I guarantee it, these guys are as excited to talk to each other as you guys are to hear what they have to say. It's just not often that we get the chance to sit down and, for guys of this stature to pick each other's brains. So we're happy to facilitate it and just happy to be included in it as well.
Yeah, I'll just add a guy who's maybe a little later to the party when it comes to the community behind the high stakes streets. Dan graciously invited me to the back rooms, and I get to play in leagues with you Sharks now. But in that, you learn who the other Sharks and the other high stakes guys really respect in the game, and these are three guys that you hear their names very often when it comes to people paying attention, and some of the big names that you guys listen to out there, you guys know out there, definitely pay attention to these guys. So hopefully you're paying attention tonight. You've got your, as I like to say, the old man, your pen and paper ready. You got your IPA ready. We're gonna jump right into it, Dan. We're coming fresh off of another dramatic Bengals game. They seem to always have some kind of drama behind them. You think going into it, it's gonna be another Thursday night where Jacksonville just pummels, but Jake Browning opens eyes. Dan Mixon goes off for a big game. Chase was alive. Woke up with Browning, surprisingly. I'll go to Nelson first. Bottom pocket corner. Can the good times keep going and rolling for the Bengals without Burrow, with now Jake Browning?
Yeah, he looked good on Monday night, but I think it's one of those situations where it's like, what have you done for me lately? Just a week ago, we had no interest in Browning as he struggled against the Steelers, I believe, and couldn't get anything done. And then, last night he looked like Joe Burrow 2.0, and I'm sure everyone he's going to be probably, somewhere around 90% owned by tomorrow night. Because I think a lot of people are going to be going after him.
It's funny because I'm literally looking at a tweet from, or an X, whatever you call him, Adam Levitan can confirm there's no difference between Joe Burrow and Jake Browning. We appreciate their commitment to the bit. And he's got back and forth, flipping back and forth between the two in interviews and stuff. So that's hilarious. Chris, how do you feel about the Bengals with their backup quarterback rest of season?
Yeah, no doubt. A lot better as a Jamar Chase owner. I think that was obviously the biggest takeaway that you could get out of that game was Browning going straight down the field. And as a Jamar Chase owner, if that's going to be the game plan where they went right out of the gate to giving him some quick buddy passes, rack up those PPR points until you finally hit a big one, that's what we want to see as Jamar Chase owners. I don't know who else you could really start in this Bengal offense in the passing game going forward, though. Mixon came out of nowhere. I think a lot of us were down on Mixon coming into this game, and then he drops basically 30 PPR points. So that was pretty unexpected. But I think, as we go forward here, the Bengals, the next 4 weeks, their schedule looks pretty good. No defenses that I see on their schedule that's going to scare me away. And, big upgrade here, whereas I think a lot of us were looking at Jamar Chase as maybe a wide receiver 2 going forward. Maybe now, after the Monday night's game, we look at him back in our wide receiver 1 graces.
Billy, how do you feel about it?
I mean, it comes down to there's just not a lot of options out there. So we might be having to lean on him. Like Chris said, I think it was nice to see what he did last night for Chase. I kind of disagree with Chris about the schedule. I think the schedule is a little tougher for him, to be honest with you. I think they have 3 potential really rough weather games, potentially. And he did struggle against the Steelers, and I'm a Steeler fan, and they look terrible against Arizona, but they don't really let they're pretty decent against the pass. They're not too bad against that. And then I don't like him going into Kansas City the last week in week 17. Kansas City's pretty decent at home. They played solid defense there. But, I think he's safe for a while. We don't have to worry about Tyler Boyd coming in for sure to do backup QB duties after last night. That was just horrendous what he did. But, he's somebody I wouldn't feel comfortable starting him, but I think for the options, I don't know if T. Higgins has a pulse yet or not. I guess we're going to find out. But Chase definitely, it looks like that is going to be part of the game plan.
Yeah, you're definitely happy as a Jamar Chase. It was nice to see that because you're almost like sigh of relief. Dan, Jake Browning is the first undrafted player since 1967 to throw for 350 yards and complete 85% of his passes. How do you feel about this offense with this now legend
That is a stat I did not know, definitely.
Shout out to the at Cincy Problems on the X Machine.
Yeah, without a doubt. So yeah, I mean, I think the main thing is if you've got Jamar Chase, it gives you hope. If you got Joe Mixon, it gives you hope. If you've got T Higgins and you're still holding out hope, then Godspeed. But hopefully this helps out Higgins a little bit too. But I think just basically what it does is it shows that this is within the range of outcomes. This is definitely within the top of the range of outcomes. We hope the Pittsburgh game was at the bottom of the range of outcomes, and probably most of the things are going to, the rest of the way is going to fit somewhere in between there. But, for those few teams where I have Chase alive in a championship run, that's good news. So happy about that for sure.
Yeah, I'll just add, I mean, the bummer, or the, whatever you call it, devil's advocate, I just feel like these backup guys, especially these guys that have been around a bit, there's usually a reason, and the Cinderella story usually doesn't last very long. They turn into a pumpkin. Eventually, you've got the odd, Brock Purdy here and there, but usually you've got the Dobbs that we recently saw, and now you're starting to see a bit of slowdown. JJ comes back. Hopefully that helps him back. But I think the difference here, are the weapons are there. We saw that this week. Can that carry him enough, and can this offense continue to progress, I guess, with him in the position? Only time will tell, but that's kind of my only concern there. Let's go to Jacksonville, to another injury with Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. It's, you hate this time of year, such significant guys that have helped us along the way. I'm lucky in the sense that one of my Fantasy Pros teams, I think it is, where I have Tua and Trevor Lawrence. That's like my only Trevor Lawrence, where I have to actually make a decision in starting my lineup. So I'm more looking at the pieces around him. I'll go to you first, Dan, on this one. How did the pieces around him for you? How are they affected with this? How are you playing this in a couple instances in your own rosters?
Yeah, so I think, kind of the main thing here is, can Trevor Lawrence make it back, and what sort of effectiveness is he going to have if he tries to come back real quick? So we could be looking at a couple weeks of CJ Beathard here. And, Beathard didn't look that bad on the drive and a half or two drives that he had there. But, this is definitely a different offense without Christian Kirk in there. And if Beathard is quarterback, it's going to change you even more. But, I think Parker Washington, that was an eye opener for sure. But he really took over pretty much 100% for Christian Kirk in the slot. And then we saw, a lot of balls going to Evan Engram, which I would expect if we have Beathard in there, that's probably going to continue as well. So I think it's probably worse for Ridley, probably better for ETN and Ingram, and the Parker Washington thing. Maybe it works out. I don't know.
Yeah, he looked pretty good, and you saw them make a point of getting Ingram that touchdown this past weekend. So you got to think that continues now. Billy, how do you feel about it? Jacksonville, are you heavily invested? Is this really hurting you kind of down the stretch, and how are you kind of reacting to it?
Not terribly. I'm not too bad from it. I think the person's going to get affected a lot by this again is Calvin Ridley, because it was all when Zay Jones was out. That's what everybody said. Oh, well, Zay Jones is out. He's not producing. When now Kirk's out, it's kind of the same thing. He just didn't seem to click. I mean, that could be hurting them. I agree with Dan. I think Ingram's going to be a target going forward. My personal feelings on this, I think Lawrence misses one game. I think he misses this week, and I think he's back in week 15 for the playoffs. I don't have a ton of Lawrence, and I did have a lot of Kirk. And I would swear I had 4 or 5 shares of Kirk. Every single team had tanked Dell. All of them. So I lost Dell and Kirk on these teams. It just it's a killer. I mean, it was
Stay away from me, Billy.
Yeah, I mean, I had a team. Those two literally could be on my bench, and I mean, I had a team that it was great options every week. Now I literally have my team, but if any more injuries, I'm done. I mean, I don't have anything else. It's just survival of the fittest right now for everybody. But I think Jacksonville's going to struggle a little bit offensively. I mean, they struggled. How many games did Lawrence have this year where he really struggled when he was out there? So I think they're going to struggle a little bit going forward.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, he was really starting to click, though.
Yeah.
It's been a real struggle for Trevor Lawrence owners. He's my quarterback in the New York Super that we're all in. Last night was the last thing I needed to see with nothing. We look at the waiver wire right now in high stakes leagues. There's absolutely nothing at the quarterback position. So it's dumpster diving pretty much as you take these teams into the playoffs. And now with uncertainty surrounding Lawrence, it makes it even harder to set up your playoff rosters going forward. I agree with Billy, though, and at least I'm hoping that we're both on the same page on this one. That, listen, week 14 here, if you don't need Trevor Lawrence and you have better options than him, sitting on your bench, you turn to him regardless here. Lawrence going into Cleveland, it's not the great matchup. It's supposed to be terrible weather there. We get to December in a Cleveland game here, and already we're having to deal with some weather. But, we escaped the worst. No Achilles, no anything like that for Trevor Lawrence. I think he misses this week's game. Hopefully start of playoffs next week. He's back in our lineups. Got to figure that he's probably not going to run that much. He's a mobile quarterback that can actually get it done, taking off and running, but probably don't see that for the playoff weeks, dealing with a high ankle sprain. But I just want him under center, throwing, to these guys, uptick for Ingram, and we'll see where it goes for Jacksonville. But I expect to have him for the playoff weeks, which they do have a decent playoff schedule. They have Carolina, Tampa, in that playoff schedule. So Lawrence was hot, and I was hoping that he was going to continue it straight through week 17 for me.
Nelson, are you as optimistic as Chris? How you feeling about Jacksonville with this injury now?
I have to be optimistic. He was my most owned quarterback. I have backup options. I've got Stroud and Purdy on some teams, so I think I'll be okay. But it was nice to see that he was starting to come on and things were clicking. It looked like he was going to go on a little bit of a heater and here to end the year, and put up some monster games. But I think, the ankle injury, he's not going to be able to run as much as he's capable. And the Christian Kirk injury looks like he's pretty much done for the fantasy season. So, I think Zay Jones and Ingram are going to have to step up. And it's probably going to impact, Ridley this week. Probably, if you don't have options, it is what it is. You got to play Ridley, but I'm not expecting anything great from him against Cleveland and Beathard at quarterback. So, a little bit of a struggle, but I think once we get past that, like Chris said, they get Baltimore too in week 15. So that's tough, can be tough. And then Tampa and Carolina, I'd be looking forward to starting them at that point.
When we come back from a word from our sponsors, we're going to look at some draft strategies that worked for us this year, what we're going to take away from 2023 to help us in 2024. And again, guys, get those pen and papers ready.
Hey, so many ask me, what's wrong with sportsbooks? Why so many of them fail? The answer is simple. They don't innovate. They're just casino sportsbooks on a phone. That's all they've been. There are a few that are doing a good job. We partner with them. Most of them, not so much. Until Bet Openly came along. Bet Openly said, hey, we're going to innovate. We're going to do something groundbreaking. We're going to have peer-to-peer betting in all states, and you pay 1%. When you win, you pay just 1% on your winnings. You heard that right. It's 1%. With code Underworld, you qualify for just that 1% transaction fee on Bet Openly. It gives you ultimate flexibility to set your own lines and browse lines that others have set. Think about it. That's what betting should be. And now that is the reality. BetOpenly.com. The code is Underworld. Check it out.
All right, we're back. Guys, we're approaching the money weeks. Be excited. If you're watching this right now, it's December, 5th today? Is it the 5th, Dan? Yeah, it's the 5th.
Yes, it is.
You're still watching fantasy football. You came across this golden nugget with these high-stakes legends just pouring all their tips and tricks to help you guys win your championship. So you got to be smiling when you're watching this show right now. Smash that like button. Guys, we're going to talk about, we'll go around the clock, takeaways. I'll go to you first, Nelson. What's a takeaway from 2023 that you're going to take into 2024? You feel it works for you, whether it's something new or something that you're going to keep doing?
Probably my main takeaway was that my teams where I started wide receiver, are doing much better than teams where I took a running back in the first 2 rounds. And it's a reminder that even though like Pollard, Saquon, Bijan Robinson, Eckler, those guys look great at the time to, draft one of them. But my teams with those guys on them are, kind of, struggling. So my main takeaway is, I'm just going to, I got to go back to, just going wide receiver and finding the running backs later in the draft.
Chris, how about you, man? What's a takeaway for you from 2023?
Probably, I avoiding these wide receivers that the crowd is trying to avoid, and going back in and buying the dip on some of these wide receiver ones when you get a good discount on them, regardless of their situation. We had some guys, namely Mike Evans and Michael Pittman. And, these guys fell to the 6th and 7th rounds as wide receiver ones on their team. And I know myself as well as Nelson and Billy will tell you, and Dan, you guys, we usually like to go away from the herd, but in this instance, I guess I was with the herd, and I got to look into those situations more. If I could get these quality wide receiver ones on the team, let these situations shake out. I wasn't a big Anthony Richardson believer, Baker Mayfield believer, but these guys are wide receiver ones still on their teams and producing. And if you got them at the wide receiver 3 or 4 on your team in the 6th and 7th round where they fell to, you hit gold this year.
Yeah, especially these guys that we talk about it often, Dan, guys that have been there before, that have given you those top 12 seasons. You talked about a couple there. Mike Evans especially crushed it last week, especially when they're falling at that discount. And they're still the wide receiver one that you're getting in those rounds, like you said, Chris, the 8s, the 9s. That's money when you pick up that kind of value that hits hard. And it's usually the guys that look ugly, going into August, like you said, to most people. Billy, what's something that you learned this year that you're going to take away, bring into next year?
So for me, I generally save a lot of my money on free agency. And this year, there's nothing really on there except at the very beginning of the year, the pre-week before the season, and even after week 1. Puka Nacua, Kyren Williams, they were available in some spots, and I really should have just pushed the gas pedal and went after them, and I didn't. So, everything's year to year. Next year you could do it. You could get a bus for $800 and you blow all your money. But most of my teams this year, like Nelson said, the teams that I started 2 receivers are doing well because just wide receivers tend to stay. They hold their value much better. But I have so many teams that have like 6 really good receivers and no running backs. And it's just hard to, you got to hit those running backs later on. I do have a lot of David Montgomery, and he's been a nice, he's been injured here and there, but he's been nice overall. But the other thing for me is I was going for the tight end a little earlier this year. I had a lot of Mark Andrews, and that was going well for a while. It was, paying dividends, and then obviously that fell apart. So, obviously, and it's harder because Kelsey kind of came back to the field. But when you have Laporte or Kincaid right now, you're right with everybody else anyway, and you get them rounds 9 and 10. So for me, free agency is one of the biggest things, but kind of staying true to the wide receiver format as well. Just that these running backs they're just not reliable. I hate to say it like that, but they just aren't. There's always 1 or 2 that are really good, but we just don't know who they are. And like I said, the back end of the draft this year, they just aren't holding their value right now.
Yeah, I love that approach. We talk about that, Dan, often being top heavy at receiver and getting those studs early. Nelson, you talked about that as well. It just feels if it gives you a solid strength, you know what I mean? You're solid at receiver. You can fit up to 4 in the FFPC, you know, and other leagues as well where you have those extra flex spots. Dan, what did you take away this year going into 2024?
Yeah, I think my main takeaway was just kind of staying a little bit more balanced. Generally leading off with receiver. And sometimes that meant, I would be, 4 wide receivers or 3 wide receivers and a quarterback deep before I'd get my first running back. But that was fine, because I would just, if I was getting the wide receivers early, I'd just be loading up on running backs late. But just in general, I think more than anything, probably shading a little bit more towards the elite quarterbacks kept me out of a lot of bust players in like the second and third rounds. That just the teams where I didn't take the elite quarterback, it wasn't necessarily that the quarterback that I did take later was hurting me. It was the players I took instead of that quarterback in the second and third round tended to be the ones that were hurting me.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot, a few that you guys mentioned that helped me this year, and this one is kind of relevant to the next question. We'll talk about drafting strategies specifically before we get into kind of looking at each position and getting you guys ready rest of the season. Was those onesie positions? Not only you guys talked about going a little earlier at tight end. The quarterbacks, those early quarterbacks were really helpful this year, especially with those middle guys getting hurt with like Rodgers, Cousins, Richardson. So having that advantage at quarterback was huge, but complementing them with the proper, QB2 was also really important. And same with the tight ends, whether that's off of an injury or into the bye weeks, having backup plans, really, being more conscious of having backup plans for me this year. In those, especially in those redraft leagues where you're starting every year, every week, and you're playing that waiver wire, that really helped me this year, and it's something I'm going to keep working on going into next year. Let's look at draft strategies, guys, before we get into the specific positions. If it's any different, like looking at draft boards now, if you guys look back at all, is there anything that you do different or that you did different maybe this year that you think will help you moving forward? Billy, I'll start with you.
I mean, the big quarterbacks, like Dan said, they kind of kept you out of some trouble with other positions. And, you can't go wrong with a Josh Allen or Hurts. I mean, let's be fair. Mahomes is just not doing it right now. It's not working with him. But the majority of my teams that are doing well have players like Jared Goff or, Dak, of course, Purdy. I mean, these are the teams that are doing well. And I didn't draft Purdy certainly as a starter, but these are doing well right now, and I don't know yet next year. I mean, the tush push is going to be a huge deal. If they get rid of that, Jalen Hurts drops. I mean,
you saw T-Law pull one last night, early in last night's game.
Yeah,
that was a good. They should play. They should call that play for Jacksonville when Trevor Lawrence is on the goal line, just like Hurts on the goal line. He's 6'6". All he's got to do is hike the ball and reach his arm out. That's it. It's an automatic touchdown. They had the chance a couple weeks ago to do that, and they didn't, and I was outraged by it. But they've learned their lesson. Just got to put that in there.
But like the Herberts and the Burrows and the Lamar, I mean, even Lamar has just he's really cooled off because they're just running the ball in too much now. And so it's either, nobody's going to be crying because they have Hurts and Allen going into the tournament here because you know what they can put up on a given week. But I think next year, quarterback for me is always relative on whether, what's on the board at that time. If there's nobody I really like and, there's a great quarterback there, I take the quarterback. If not, I take the player and I can get a quarterback later. So
because it becomes a comfort pick, right, Billy? Like getting that blankie, with the quarterback.
It really does.
Yeah. But Purdy's been my blankie for my Joe Burrow teams this year. For whatever reason, where Joe Burrow's hurt, I got Purdy just, leading the way, and it just it sucks to lose Burrow, but you gotta be thankful you got guys like Purdy and Love. Jordan Love, Dan, is a guy we drafted a lot of.
Yeah, for sure.
Nelson, how about you, drafting wise, draft strategies?
I was an early quarterback drafter this year. I thought there was a few questionable players, landmines this year early in the draft, and I thought that like Hurts and Allen stood out, and I wanted to get good exposure to those guys, and I felt like they were pretty safe to just take those guys and then figure out, the wide receiver or running back position that I passed on later in the draft. The other thing is probably sticking to the process that I followed this year is if I didn't push up a quarterback and take one early, I pushed it back and I ended up double tapping the quarterback position. So every time I pushed it back, my go-to was Daniel Jones and Dak Prescott. So got one wrong, very wrong, and got one very right. So I think what happens with a lot of drafters and a lot of people is that we tend to get a little greedy and we feel like, we push the quarterback position back and there's like, there's that, young rookie running back or the elite handcuff running back available there in the 9th round that I got to have. And I think if you just take a step back and say, you know what, the position of weakness here is I got to get, quarterback right. So, just double tapping that position. I think I noticed that on my teams that helped me out this year and not having, getting too greedy and feeling like, I needed to take one of those like young handcuff running backs.
Which you can also apply to tight end, right? Like if you don't go early and then wait later as your backup, you double tap a bit later, and it kind of gives you that safety blanket. And I had the same thing, with my AR teams, my Richardson teams, either had Cousin there or even, like you said, Dak getting lucky on a guy like Dak. But definitely where you draft the first guy and then backing it up at the right place with the double tap later at quarterback, I think, again, it probably helped you this year, and you're still in the running because of that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Dak is carrying, my teams right now. And, I look back and I could see where if I pass on him and I take that running back, who knows, if I end up with a Jared Goff or a Stroud on those teams, I'd probably have to get very lucky, to end up with those guys. So yeah, it's more of just a lesson learned and, sticking to that process. And like you said, with tight end, that was something that I did. I got the early tight end wrong for the most part. And then
Trey McBride saved the day or what?
No, it was actually Kincaid and Laporta. So
there you go. Yeah, Laporta was nice.
At tight end, so like my strategy this year was pretty simple. I was taking Darren Waller early, and if I didn't take Waller, I was taking Kincaid and Laporta. So again, got something very, very wrong, and ended up getting when pushing it back, I got those two guys right. So it's the same thing, double tapping that position, trying to get, two upside guys or a steady guy in like Schultz, and then an upside guy, something like that. I think that's a good strategy.
Chris, how about you? Draft strategies that you're liking that you
overall did. or at the quarterback position, JD?
No, just overall, man. Overall, no specific position.
Overall, going into next year, I mean, it changes every year. So, I sit back in the offseason, I look at the draft board, and then I, start to plan out my attacks. But this past year, just like the rest of us, it was a year where the quarterback position was like no other. And you saw so many quarterbacks, 8 or 9 guys that we thought were elite guys. So we didn't have to, jump in so early. We could let the draft come to us and see which one we got value on in the 3rd or 4th round. If we wanted it, if we got any value on the top 3, we could do that. I would do the same thing. I just think that as a whole, the industry, we look at it as like a fail right now with quarterback because of early on Kirk Cousins and Tua were killing it. Kirk was basically the QB1. And then once Kirk went down, now we had the explosions of CJ Stroud and Dak. So as a whole, it looks like, if you went early on quarterback, that was the wrong move this year. But as we move into the fantasy playoffs here, I think like Billy said, who else would you rather have as Josh Allen and Hurts, going forward here? So listen, every year there's going to be hits late in the draft at quarterback. There's going to be hits in the middle rounds, and there's going to be some hits and misses in the early rounds. So overall, though, strategy-wise, I'm happy with mine. I attacked wide receiver heavy often, early on in drafts. I tried to get one bell cow running back to build off of in the first couple rounds, and then I waited on tight end, and just like Nelson, Kincaid and Laporta and Evan Ingram were my targets. So since tight end, I'm happy with straight across the board, and it's just a matter of which teams got really hurt with injuries early on with some guys that I'm feeling it the most.
Man, Dan, before I pass to you, I want to gloat about a trade. I was looking at a trade where I had Laporta. I drafted Laporta, so he was popping. So I had Mark Andrews to traded Mark Andrews for Nico Collins in the first on November 2nd. And right now I'm heading to the playoffs because of it. And poor guy who took the Mark Andrews, but sometimes you get lucky. The whole point was Laporta. You gotta love Laporta this year as a rookie, and Kincaid for sure, but Laporta definitely looks like a beast. Dan, how about you draft wise before we get into the specifics here at quarterback?
Yeah, I think the main thing is I went into my redraft managed leagues with a little bit more of the idea that I wanted to have fewer questions at like quarterback and or tight end. And in some cases, I went early on both quarterback and tight end, which I don't normally do. And I've been kind of on record that that's not always a real great idea because it tends to leave you short at either wide receiver or running back. But, on those teams, I just said, I'm going to be short at running back, and I'm going to make sure I get my wide receivers in there too. And I felt like I could get away with it a little bit more this past year because I felt like I was doing a pretty good job of identifying some mid-round running backs that would work out for me. And in a lot of cases, they did. There were, of course, who wouldn't have loved to have had, a full season out of Kyren Williams or Devonta chain, but, that would have really turbocharged a lot of my lineups. But, I wasn't unhappy about the fact that I didn't have to sit there and spend a lot of waiver dollars trying to sift through quarterbacks or sift through tight ends, and I wasn't having to make tough decisions with my lineups. If you get Josh Allen or Jalen Hurts, you're just sticking them in there week after week, and for the most part, Patrick Mahomes early in the year, that was a good decision too. Not quite so much over the past few weeks, but early in the season it was.
The thing is with those onesie spots, and I see when I look at the structure of a roster in general, I see like I sell. I'm in the medical field, and I sell to injectors like injectable fillers, and they use different gels depending on what they're trying to do with the face. So if they're trying to build like a structure, like a jawline, or like a cheek, or a chin, they're using like a thicker gel than something like when they're doing a lip, or like an area that's softer, right? So it's the same thing for me when I'm building my roster. If I'm solid at the structure level, like those onesies with the quarterback, the tight end, even like your kicker and your defenses in the leagues where you play those in high stakes, like on FFPC, if you're solid at all four of those onesies, and you have options at running back and receiver, right? Like I'm not saying you just kibosh those positions, but if you balance it right, and I'm hearing it from all four of you guys, where we all took care of those onesie positions, whether it's quarterback, tight end. We went earlier than usual in a lot of spots where you guys mentioned, but it seemed to be like that was a lot of the success was being strong at those positions. It gives you an advantage, at least going in, no matter who you're playing. Kelsey, if you have that Kittle or one of those top guys, we talked about Laporta and Kincaid, it definitely makes a difference. Because if you miss there, it's really hard to make up. To just find a guy. You get lucky and get Trey McBride early, but only one guy in your league was able to do that. So just a little. Hopefully, you guys got something out of it. I know I did. I think that's these roundtables. That's why these are the best. Dan, let's get into specifics Who's the lucky guy? Who wants to go first and give us their top 5 quarterbacks rest of season right now? Come on, give me a hand. Volunteer here. Come on, boys. Guys, smash the like.
I think we're all going to probably have the same 5. I got a feeling, but I could be wrong.
All right, Billy's going first. Billy's going
Go for
first.
it.
I like it.
Billy stepped up. There you go, Billy.
I like it. I like
I
it.
mean, so I would go with Dak. I mean, Dak's just been on fire. I mean, I think the thing I like most about him, he's got 3 great games that it could be all shootouts because he's going against Buffalo, Miami, and Detroit. 3 great I mean, those games could go wild. That's exactly what you want for your quarterback to have. So he'd be 1. I'd probably go with Hurts at 2, Josh at 3, Purdy at 4, and Stroud at 5.
Damn. I had the top 3. I like that you went Purdy. And then you're sticking to Stroud. Do you think Stroud now losing Tank and, just the, rookie, all that kind of stuff, do you think that there's a bit of a dip there, or do you think they can keep going strong and Noah Brown steps in and they're good?
Well, I think Noah Brown will step up a little bit. Plus, I think, the fact they have Tennessee twice is really nice because they're just a pass front.
Very key.
So
Yeah.
I think that's a big deal. So, and I mean, they're just letting him loose. They're just letting him cut loose. So I think he'd be my 5.
Makes my Nico Collins love grow even more. But
Oh, yeah. He's looking great for the playoffs.
he's going to get peppered even more. I mean, as long as he can handle it, man, I love it. Nelson, top 5. Is it similar? Or where's
I
the
got the
difference?
same as Billy. I got
Wow.
Hurts, Dak, Allen, Purdy, Stroud.
Well,
Chris, you different anywhere?
absolutely. I got
love
Allen first, rest of the way. Going into that bye week, I just see him putting the team on his back. I love this schedule: Kansas City, Dallas, the Chargers, the Pats. Those 2 middle games, the first 2 weeks of the playoffs with Dallas and the Chargers. Those 2 games, you might see a Vegas total at about 55 for both of those. So, another quarterback that's, a mobile quarterback running. I have Allen there. I can easily interchange with Dak and Hurts, who I have at 2 and 3, simply because these 2 guys are going to be going head-to-head for the MVP trophy. So, inflate those stats as we get down the stretch. I think it was huge that the Niners beat the Eagles to keep everybody in the running here for the MVP, and the Eagles not taking their foot off the brakes with Hurts maybe in the last 2 weeks here. After that, I'm still going with Lamar Jackson. I like Lamar. I like this schedule here. I know he's got the 49ers there, but give me a game where there could be a little bit of a back and forth shootout here. The Jags and then Miami in the championship week. And last year, they put on a show, the 2 of them, Tua and Lamar there. So that's going to be my little upset pick there, Lamar. And I went Justin Herbert. I know a lot of people are down on him, but I love that schedule too. Vegas, the Bills, and the Broncos last 3 weeks. Stroud, I'm a little worried about just because losing Tank Dell. And then he's got the Jets this week. So we had to include these first 4 weeks. I don't like C.J. Stroud going into New York to play the Jets defense. And I know you guys all had Brock Purdy in your top 5. I love Purdy as well, but I just worry about, Purdy getting in these situations where McCaffrey runs in the first 2. You got a game versus, Arizona, I believe, and another one versus Washington. You got 2 games there that maybe it's 24-3 at halftime. McCaffrey ran a couple in, and Purdy's a 175 and 1 or 2 touchdowns at the end of the day. I need a quarterback that's going to be back and forth in shootouts the rest of the way.
Dan, where are you going to switch it up? You going to give us a little something different here, a little shake and bake?
I'm going to give you the same pretty much top 4 as the other guys: Hurts, Allen, Dak, Purdy. I'm going to throw in a dark horse of Jordan Love. Love what he's been doing the past few weeks. And
things have changed, huh?
Yeah.
Haven't they? Yeah, and his schedule is really nothing to worry about. He's got the Giants, he's got Tampa, Carolina, Minnesota. None of those are defenses that are going to scare you at all. And Green Bay is right back in the thick of the playoff chase. So I think they're going to be I think they're starting to put it together. I think Love is starting to put it together. It's still early. Things could still fall apart, but he's a guy I'm getting more and more confident in.
Let me ask you guys, just real quick, with the Purdy take. You guys all have him in the top 4, but did that factor in the fact that,
not
like,
all.
look at
Just
these other,
three guys
look at
do.
these top
Three
three guys with Allen, Dak, and Hurts. These are guys that are throwing. These are passing offenses. Allen's not. Allen, Dak, and Hurts. We're not going to be running the ball a ton yet. They run just to keep offenses.
Purdy's feeding on Yak. Purdy's feeding on Yak from Debo and
Yep.
CMC.
Mm-hmm.
I for me, Purdy's like my QB 8 right now. I'm unlike you guys. Come on, man. You guys with your little wins, like whatever, man. Not joking. So I got Prescott, Hurts, and Allen, and then I'm sticking with Mahomes, man. Because I'll tell you this, KC, if Kelsey doesn't step up, he's got to get off his like little honeymoon thing with Swift and start focusing. Football time. Travis, come on, focus. You're still playing football, right? I think those two have to step it up if KC's going to go anywhere. So I still have Mahomes in my top 5, and I got Herbert there, like Chris. I think it was Chris that said Herbert. But I do like Love. I've got Love there, and then Lamar, Purdy, and then a little Tua in there with his Love connection to Hill.
I think him losing Watson hurts, though.
Yeah, it does.
That's his big
Agreed.
play guy.
Agreed. The nice thing is, that receiving core is, Dubs steps up. They got Reed, and now what's his name? Kraft. Kraft is looking all right. He's he should be getting a bit more targets as he plays a bit more here with what's his name? Musgrave injured. Let's do a kind of not OTC. Usually we call it OTC. I guess it's OTC, but I know this first one, Dan, you and I have this decision every week. So this is basically you're picking a QB to ride the rest of the season. Billy, we'll go to you first. Justin Herbert or Brock Purdy is a decision Dan and I in our main event. Yes, we are in first place. Yes, we are 10-2. Every week, Justin Herbert or Brock Purdy. Who are you playing for rest of the season, Billy? Who do you prefer?
Well, obviously Purdy. He was in my top 5, so he's got to be my pick. I mean,
beauty, easy.
Yeah.
And anyone like Herbert? Okay, Chris, you like Herbert better than Purdy?
Yes.
Nelson?
Purdy.
Dan?
Purdy. And it would have been Herbert, but the fact that he's lost so many weapons and Eckler is clearly gimpy, that's what puts Purdy over Herbert for me. He's just had more trouble sustaining drives.
Yeah, and the good thing for Purdy is, damn, those weapons just step it up this time of year. Like Debo already started, and these, Kittle. There's just Ayuk. There's always someone there. The weapons are nice there in San Fran. It's a tough one. I feel like those two are neck and neck every week when Dan and I are looking at it. Yeah, you can't go wrong unless you're Dan and I. We usually do.
I have Herbert over Purdy just for the simple fact that I think the Chargers' lack of the run game just puts the ball in Herbert's hands, and he's got all these indoor games down the stretch. They got to put it in his hands and let him throw as much as possible to get the jobs done. Plus, you got a bad defense with the Chargers compared to a great defense with the Niners. It all adds up. Not to take anything away from Purdy. He's playing absolutely great, and he's got himself top 3 or 4 in the MVP race.
So since week 9, Herbert averaging 16 fantasy points, Purdy 22, just over 22 fantasy points.
Well, that's all because of this past week's, though, JD. This past week versus the Patriots,
Chris, I'm the host here.
I'm just saying.
All right, let's go to another difficult one. Which I'm sure some of the audience has this decision to make every week. Rest of season. Nelson, Patrick Mahomes or CJ Stroud?
Give me Stroud.
Anyone like Mahomes better than Stroud?
I mean, I'm with Chris in the fact that I don't like Stroud this week because going in New York, but I like Stroud much better the following 3 weeks in the playoffs.
I probably like Stroud better, but just the fact that he's got the games against the Jets and Cleveland, I'm not a real fan of those, but if you actually had to choose between the two, Mahomes' schedule is not too bad those 2 weeks, so I would be more flip-flopping than anything. How's that for a way to weasel out with that? I would actually answer.
So since week 9, again, Stroud QB2, Mahomes been QB15. So, I mean, if you're riding the hot hand, you definitely want Stroud. I do think Mahomes steps it up a notch, but it's hard not to ride the hot hand there moving forward. You probably prefer Stroud. I don't know. I feel like it's super close. So I think they can both be going in different directions if things kind of turn around for Mahomes and Kelsey out there in KC. The elite quarterback, obviously we just talked about it, right? Was a really popular strategy this year. It worked often. There were 3 QBs that went off before round 3. We talked about them: Mahomes, Allen, Hurts, and then an additional 3 went off in round 4 of NFFCs: Burrow, Lamar, Herbert. Dan, I'll go to you first on this one. How much did you use the strategy? How effective? Oh, this is kind of what we just talked about, right?
Yeah, we
go
kind of covered that one.
All right.
Yeah, I would say let's just move on to the running backs.
Let's move on to my favorite position, the running backs.
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna go to Chris first. Running back, Chris, I feel like you used to be more of a running back early guy. No, like my.
Never.
Or was that your part?
No shot.
Chris is the wide receiver.
So let's
guy.
go. So we're definitely going to Chris first. So Chris, give us your top 5 running backs rest of season.
Well, I think we're all going to agree CMC is one. And then it gets interesting, I think, here. I have Kyren Williams at 2. I love the rest of the season schedule, the fact that he's getting it done, rushing and receiving here.
See, I feel like I'm going to have a hot take,
3.
and then one of you guys just fucking just takes it, man. Just Chris.
I mean, well, I'll wait to see what the guys have as their top 5. I don't think that's a hot take at all, though. But after that, I have Bijan Robinson at 3. I think he's going to have a nice end of season. Alvin Kamara at 4. And I got DeAndre Swift at 5 based on his schedule down the stretch here. So I'll turn it over to the boys and see how off that is.
Billy, were you different on that, or how different are you?
First 2 are exactly the same. C-Mac and Kyren. I have Kamara at 3, and I have Pacheco at 4 because they've been leaning on the run a lot. And then it was between Bijan and Rachaad White. But since I hate Arthur Smith and I don't trust him, I'm going to go with Rachaad White.
Nelson.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, Billy.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, I can't. It's just every time you just get excited. I agree with Chris. They're starting to give him the ball more and things are turning up. But Rachaad White's been playing well. The rushing volume's terrible. He gets 20 carries for like 30 yards, but, he's catching a lot of passes. Seems to be finding the end zone every week. He's doing pretty well.
Nelson, how about you?
I have the same guys as Billy. I have CMC, Kyren, then Kamara, and then Rachaad White, and then Pacheco.
No. Okay.
Yeah, Dan, did you go already?
I have not. I had the
Go
same
ahead.
top 4: CMC, Kyren, Kamara, Rachaad. 5th one, I think is a lot more wide open. I mean, I feel pretty good about that top 4. I think he can go to a lot of ways with this 5th one. A little bit worried about what happens when McKinnon comes back to Pacheco. There's a lot of places where the job's just kind of being split. So I'm just going with my heart here, and it's never going to happen, but I'm just going to go with HN.
Yeah, you just named mine, Dan. I had CMC, Kyren, Rachaad White, Kamara, and then HN. I feel like that last one, like you said, you can throw Swift in it. You guys talked about it. Bijan with the schedule is nice. Nelson, who's your most disappointing RB this season so far?
Probably Pollard. Most disappointing. I expected a lot more from him. He's turned it on the last couple of weeks, but other than that first game against the Giants, he just kind of sleptwalk. Is that a word? Through the season.
Now it is.
It is.
Now
today.
it is. He was sleepwalking through the season.
What was that? Suckwalk?
Sleptwalked.
Sleptwalked, but suckwalked also works.
Sucky,
Yeah,
sucky.
yeah. So I think he was pretty disappointing, and then Eckler also.
Yeah, mine's definitely Eckler. Just where he was going, I don't have a lot of them. But Chris, how about you? Disappointing running
Yeah,
back.
it's got to be Tony Pollard for me. Luckily, I didn't get my hands on too many shares of Pollard at the turn there. It was more Bijan, Barkley, and Chubb who I lost. But Pollard was a fourth guy in that grouping for me. The places that I got him, he's been a disappointment for me. I have no shares of Eckler, but if I did, he would definitely be the big disappointment for me.
Billy?
Yeah, Eckler's probably number one for me. Like Chris, I didn't have a ton of Pollard. I was trying to get him a lot more, and he just didn't work out in the drafts I was in. The one that really, for me, and I fell into this, I thought one more year I could suck out of it, was Aaron Jones. I figured he'd be a 230, 240 back again, and he just has been a disaster. And some of the teams where you went really receiver heavy, maybe a tight end early or something, you rely on him as your one, dead, just done. So
I feel like, Dan, you liked Aaron Jones this year, right?
I was right there with Billy. That was my answer too, for exactly the same reasons. There were just so many places that I took him, more so than Pollard or Eckler, and for the exact same reason, going heavy on wide receivers early, or maybe tossing in a quarterback or whatever in there. And so Aaron Jones was kind of that guy I was relying on, and those teams, for the most part, are just dead in the water.
Let's talk dark horse running backs. Type that can help you dominate and win a championship, especially this time of year. Chris, I'll go to you first. Again, I know how much you love the running back position. Who's the guy you like rest of the season?
Dark horse guy, just because based on his schedule here, I know he's kind of been a little bit of a disappointment for all of us because, I think we all loved him. But James Cook, the rest of the season here, coming out of the bye week, I think his games and game scripts set up nicely for him to maybe be a top 10 RB1, as long as these coaches get their heads out of their ass and keep Latavius Murray off the field as much as possible. But rushing and receiving, I think James Cook could be around 20 points a game for these next 3 or 4 weeks here. So he's a dark horse. I just got to throw out two under the radar names there with him, though. Coming out of the bye week here, Keaton Mitchell and Roschon Johnson here. We could enter this Sunday and just see the backfields get turned over to these guys at a 75% clip here. And those are two names that, could carry teams out of nowhere.
Yeah, I would love to see Roschon take over there in Chicago. Nelson, how about you? Dark horse running back.
Yeah, for me, I think the two guys that are kind of under the radar that could dominate during the playoffs is Pacheco and Chuba Hubbard. So those would be the two
Chuba.
guys.
I like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Chuba's coming on nicely.
Stole my guy.
There you go. Now you know how it feels, Dan.
I had Chuba down there, but I do like Chris's answer a lot too. James Cook. I think that's a
great answer
as well.
Yeah, but we've seen Buffalo turn, kind of go heavier. They trusted Singletary a couple years ago down the stretch. James Cook has a talent, man. It's just give him a bit more at the goal line, Dan, who's your dark horse?
That was it, Chuba.
That was it. All right, there you go.
He was my guy.
All right, James Cook was mine, so we're good. Give me.
What was Billy's? I didn't hear Billy's.
Billy, I want to know Billy.
Sorry.
Yeah, what are you doing?
It's hard, man. I'm juggling 4 men here.
Billy, Billy, you got to say something if he leaves you out.
Yeah, let me know.
Mine's Aaron Stecker. Remember when Aaron Stecker won a championship for people back in the day? No. I didn't have anybody nearly as deep. The guy I think that the schedule's phenomenal for, and he's definitely not a PPR guy. Is Derrick Henry. He has dominated Houston over his career. Now Houston's much better. He also has Seattle, so he's got a really nice schedule if he can. And
he's popped, last couple games.
And then so a real dark sleeper is he got hurt would be Tajay Spears. That'd be great. I think everybody would like that.
I would love that, Billy.
Oh, it would be fantastic. Jaylen Warren would be the one, and he's not really a dark horse, but I think if Pittsburgh could finally just let the reins off of him and put Najee in the backfield, put him in the back seat of the backfield. I think he could really shine these last 3 weeks.
I like that one, Billy, a lot, especially with today's news of Harris missing practice with a knee injury. If this turns into something, then I want to switch my answer to Billy's and Jalen Warren.
That could be league winner right there for sure. I mean,
No
even
doubt.
with Harris on the field, he's giving you a hundo and some legit production. So imagine just plus the way that offense is rolling, you got Pickett out. They're gonna lean into the run there. Let's talk about running backs that maybe listeners are riding high with right now. They've got in there, they're depending on every week that might let them down and maybe crush their dreams. Now, I'll go to you first, Billy, since I forgot you on the last one. I know my answer for this one is simple, just none of mine. That's it. I just don't want any of my starting running backs on any of my legit teams right now, especially my, the ones going in the money weeks. But Billy, how about you, man? Who's a guy you think that might crush dreams as we get into
I don't know. This is hard. I thought about this. I don't know. Out of the big names, there's just so many guys that just are like irrelevant now. I know there's a lot of people still relying on Breece Hall. I can't get behind it until that offense starts to move along, do something. I know he's not somebody that, he's not a main guy or anything like that. Don't feel warm and fuzzies about Saquon, certainly going down the stretch. So I would, but if you're in a position where you got to play him, you got to play him. I mean, what else are you going to do? Pollard, he's like you said, he's been a disappointment all season. If Dak just keeps throwing, he could definitely be somebody that, could be a disappointment as well.
Nelson, how about you?
A guy for me that has been carrying teams, and I've got a little bit of him, but watching the games, he's showing me that like he's starting to run out of gas a little bit, and that's Raheem Mostert.
Mm-hmm.
So he would be.
And he's got to get an injury. He hasn't been hurt all year. I mean, come on, this is like.
Yeah.
Easy, boys.
He's never played this many games. He's never.
Plus,
played
A-Chain has to win me
He's got
leagues.
4 weeks left. He's got 4 weeks left to go. All right, let him get her. He can get her in 18.
I hate the answer because, like I said, he's carrying. I've got him on my diamond team, and he's been a big part of the success on that team. And I've got him on a couple of main events, but he just doesn't, pass the eye test. Last couple of weeks, it just seems like he's just not as explosive.
Yeah, for me, JD, if we're talking about dominant, big-time running backs that have carried teams all year long, and now I see that might start fading, and he has the last bunch of weeks, and now I'm even more worried after Monday night, is Travis Etienne. I'm worried. Now, some people might look at it as if Lawrence is out a couple of weeks, they're going to rely on Etienne. I don't think he's that type of back that you could give him the ball 25 times. They just lost their top offensive lineman, Robinson, last week. Etienne just, he was putting up 4 or 5 weeks in a row in the middle of the season, late September, October, 20-plus points every week. And now he's just slowing down. So I'm really worried about Travis Etienne as we head into these fantasy playoffs, especially with everything surrounding this team. You could see them giving more carries to it didn't happen Monday night, but they were starting to slowly incorporate Dearness Johnson, giving him more carries. He got the chest injury last week, so you don't know how hurt he is there with the ribs or whatever. I'm concerned about Etienne, and he's been great all year long, but that would be my answer.
I had Barkley for this one. I think that's it's so wild because so many running backs are already sort of started crushing dreams. They haven't even had to wait for the playoffs. It's just been like nonstop series. Ramondre Stevenson, if you were counting on him, he's gone down, all of that. But I think the actual answer, I gotta do my humble brag here. I've got a team that's got McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Kyren Williams, and Devin Achon, and it's going to be whichever one of and it's an NFFC, so I can only start 3 of the 4 every week, and it's going to be whichever one I don't start is going to end up going off every week, and that's going to be the one.
Well, let us know who that is, Dan, so we can put them in our lines.
Yeah.
Right.
Don't let me talk to you about my CMC Kyren Williams team, Dan. Don't even let me.
What do they call that? Champagne problems?
Yeah.
Is that what they say? Champagne problems?
Right.
All right. When we come back, we're gonna go around. Did we miss anyone on this last one? No, I got everybody.
No, I think we got.
All right. We're going to go to another quick word from our sponsors here and come back and wrap up the running back position, talk about if there's anything different that we do in our drafting strategy at that position.
Mojo is that player stock market. We love Mojo because we like making lifetime bets on players. You run out the clock on these guys. Mojo just rolled out a brand new fantasy platform. That's right. So now you can build a portfolio of player props. Oh, Jamar Chase, over 77.5. Oh, Kadarius Toney, under 15.5. Whatever the under is on Kadarius Toney, doesn't matter. You can just stack up the props in your portfolio. And the beauty is, once the Sunday games kick off, it's not over. It's not over until it's over with Mojo, because once those games kick off, you can then move in and out of positions. Let's say that you're well ahead of expectations. You can cash out. Let's say you're behind expectations. You're underwater. Well, you can double down. That's what makes Mojo so special, why they're different. Check it out. Go to the App Store, get the Mojo app, and use the promo code UNDERWORLD. The promo code UNDERWORLD gets you a 100% deposit match up to $100. So the promo code is UNDERWORLD, and they will match your deposit dollar for dollar. Go to Mojo, start building your portfolio, and then during the games, you can be a fantasy day trader. Woo.
All right, we're back. Chris, what will you do differently, if anything, at the running back position? The way you drafted, is there anything you're going to change? I know you like to go receiver early, you talked about. Is that changing?
No, listen, I thought I was trying to go against the herd this year. And actually in the last couple of years, I know we joked that I've always been a heavy wide receiver drafter for years. But these last couple of years, I've tried to get myself one bell cow early on. And I did the same thing this year. I will not. I have to see what the board looks like. But if you give me a bell cow back that I could get in the second round after pairing him with an elite stud wide receiver one, like I did, it didn't work out so much this year because at the turn, like we talked about, Chubb got hurt, Pollard's been ineffective, Barkley in and out, and Bijan had his dry spells. So, I tried to walk away from each of my drafts with one stud receiver in the first round and then get one of those 4 running backs. I'm not gonna change up too much next year unless the receivers are really deep in the second round, and then I'll go to the third round maybe and get a running back.
Nelson, how about you?
Yeah, same answer as earlier, that I identified just going wide receiver heavy to start the draft, and as good as those running backs look, I'm not gonna avoid them, but I rather start my drafts with wide receivers. This year, passing on like CD or AJ Brown on the turn in some drafts to take like Bijan, Saquon, Chubb, just that doesn't look too good right now. So that's probably my one strategy, is to stick with that and find running back later in the draft.
Billy, what do you got, man?
Yeah, pretty much the same thing as Chris and Nelson said. It's like,
Okay.
ADP is going to dictate where we're going to go with a lot of this stuff. And, I know there were a few years where like I just pounded wide receiver out of the gate, and you get like a mid-tier guy in like the 5th or 6th, and then you're relying on like the year. Tariq Cohen, I remember that year. I was oh, he's gonna be a great number 2 with this team. He was a disaster, and if the 1 doesn't hit, then you're just scrambling. So getting that 1 is nice, but like Nelson said, when you're getting these guys that aren't producing and you're giving up an AJ Brown or a CD, to pair those two, so it'll probably be the same scenario. We all do enough volume where we can kind of mix it up a little bit too, where we can really pound receiver in some drafts, and some of them will, maybe. I didn't have too many running back starts. I don't see that happening too often with me. But probably it's pretty much the same thing I did this year.
Dan, anything to add before we get to receiver?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think it worked out pretty well for me this year just because there were so many mid-round running backs that I was pretty excited about. And for the most part, those guys hit, or at least hit well enough that, with strong wide receivers, quarterbacks and tight ends, that you were fine with, putting in the Rashad Whites and Brian Robinsons and, guys like that, Raheem Mostert, those guys worked out pretty well. So hopefully that's going to be the same kind of thing next year.
Well, it allows you to focus your energy on the running back position, whether that's adding depth and hitting the waiver wire. And I know, like, for me, hitting Kyren Williams definitely doesn't hurt, right? And that allows you to do that when you're churning and being active with the running back position because you're solid at those other positions, like we could talk about. Billy, why don't you give me your – sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying. I just wanted to say. I think we can all agree, though, going into next year, that everyone's going to have the same mindset, and it's going to be the most wide receiver heavy early in drafts after this season that we've ever seen before. It's going to be so ridiculous that you're not even going to be able to see a running back in the first 3 rounds. You'll see a couple of them, but everybody's going to be going 0 RB. Going into next year's drafts.
You heard it right here, guys. Chris Becerra smashing running back early in 2024. Get ready for it. All right, guys, we got 20. We're not gonna waste it. So I'm gonna jump around a bit with these questions. We're not gonna hit everybody in every question, but let's do a top 5 wide receiver rest of season. Mr. Nelson Sousa, let's go.
Mine's pretty chalky here because the top wide receivers have been so good this year. I didn't want to get cute, and although there's a couple of guys, someone's going to come off the pack and put up, a couple of 30-point games in the fantasy playoffs. Always happens, but I'm going to go Tyreek, CD, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra, and Chase. I think those are the guys for me.
Kept Chase there. Okay. Chris, were you different?
Right after Tyreek, which I think we'll all agree is 1, Keenan Allen, number 2. And I think the caveat there is he's going for the all-time catch record down the stretch here. And that's a feed me every single week, approach. And he belongs in the top 5 regardless. So Keenan 2 for me. And then I have Amon-Ra St. Brown at 3. Love everything about him. He's got 3 indoor games down the stretch here. CD Lamb 4, AJ Brown 5.
Billy, were you different?
Tyreek 1. I have CD 2. I have Keenan at 3. I have AJ Brown at 4, and these are very chalky, like Nelson said. And I'm gonna put Diggs in there. I'm gonna see what we can do for last week. We're gonna see, if Allen's going to have a great 3 weeks, Diggs has to do something. So I'm going to put Diggs there at 5.
Dan, were you different?
Chris nailed mine. So,
all right. Yeah, I'm the only name I'm going to throw in there is don't forget your JJ because Justin Jefferson's coming to win leagues hard. But him, I put him at,
if anybody still has him in their championship teams.
Yeah.
That's going to be a huge advantage for getting a JJ team in the championship round. No doubt about it.
You guys have any JJ that's still alive?
I do. I got 1.
I don't. No.
I don't think I have any that are live in championship rounds. I've got like dynasty teams that are live with them, but not the big competitions.
Mm-hmm.
What about disappointments, guys, at the receiver position? Who's the most disappointing? Give me like a quick name and a quick blur on why it you think that. I'll go to you first, Billy. Disappointing receivers.
Jerry Jeudy. Is that a good one?
I hate him. I hate him.
Perfect. All you gotta say.
Billy, you made me sick just now hearing the name.
We talk about this
all the time. Every Sunday in our group chat, right, Billy? It's God, I hate Jeudy. I played this guy again.
How could you?
I dropped his ass on a team.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't blame you.
Nelson, how about you?
Yeah.
This one is unfair, so I have 2 wide receivers, but one is Garrett Wilson, and that's only because Aaron Rodgers went down. Because if Rodgers doesn't go down, Wilson's probably going to have a monster season.
Definitely.
I'm almost guaranteed that. So it's no fault of his with the quarterback play that he had to deal with. And then the other guy is Jalen Waddle. He was a consensus, mid-second round pick, and I've got him on a couple of teams. I've got him on the New York Super. Just hasn't been all that good to me.
Well,
yeah, pretty tough. Value.
Nelson just named my two. Billy, disappointing receiver.
Well, I said Judy at first. I mean,
That's right. That's right. I forgot. Man of many words. Dan, how about you?
I'm going with Justin Jefferson. I guess it just really kind of irked me that they were, playing around this last couple weeks and not throwing him out there. I mean, I get it, but the Vikings had a chance to, stay relevant in the playoff race, and I kind of wonder whether they've lost that. And I think if you're going to have Justin Jefferson, you say, you know what, if we're going to do anything in the playoffs, we need to win these two games. We need to have him out there. And this is not just because he's on my fantasy teams, but also because I'm a Vikings fan. It was just very disappointing.
Nelson, rest of the season. Sorry, Dan, did I cut you off?
Oh, I was just going to ask Nelson how good it felt to cut Jerry Jeudy when you did that. Like, did you do a little fist pump or?
It felt great. It was on a specific team where bye weeks and everything, and I was like, you know what, this fucker, I'm cutting his ass. And,
let me show him.
Yeah, I'm like, this guy does
him.
nothing for me. I'm cutting him. So yeah.
Oh man.
No doubt.
That's
All right, Nelson, Puka Nacua or Jamar Chase rest of the season?
Oh, man, Puka's my boy. But I got to go Chase. But I think Puka's going to be – I think he's going to be good the rest of the year. But I got to go Chase.
Chris? Puka or Chase?
Chase over Puka.
Oh, that's right. You had Chase. That's right. Billy?
I'm going to go Puka on this one. I think they're starting to hit their stride a little bit, the Rams, and I think they got some nice matchups. So I'm gonna go Puka.
Dan?
Tough one for me. I ended up going Chase. I probably would have gone Puka before Monday night, and I think Monday night showed me that there's just enough hope for Chase to maybe swing it that way, but it's close.
I'm gonna go Puka just because I prefer Stafford over Buddy down the stretch. What's his name?
Browning.
Thank you. Devonta Smith was the wide receiver 4 from week 14 to 16 in 2022. Dan, do you want Devonta Smith or Stephon Diggs rest of the season?
I'm probably going to be on an island here, but I'll take Devonta Smith. He is balling out. Diggs, the Buffalo offense is just the passing offense just is not flowing the way that it needs to. I don't know. Hopefully I'm wrong, but I'm afraid Devonta Smith might be the answer.
Nelson, disagree or agree?
I think the only reason why Devontae turned it on late last year was because of Goddard, right?
Goddard, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the only reason why Devontae Smith, who started off very slow this year, is the Goddard injury. So I don't think it's a coincidence that when he got hurt, that's kind of when he started having his big games. So Goddard's talking about coming back this week. So I actually think that, Devontae, might not get as many targets as he had been seeing. So, yeah, give me Diggs all day.
Chris?
Yeah, no doubt. Diggs, factor in the schedule, factor in Devonta Smith getting Goddard back. Less targets there in the offense, and it's Diggs over Devonta Smith for me.
Billy, agree or disagree?
Yeah, Diggs. And the main reason I think, agree with Nelson, it's when Goddard's out of that lineup, he definitely starts to produce a lot more. When Goddard goes back in, and from everything we're hearing, he'll probably be back this week. We'll see. The targets should definitely go down for him.
Who's a receiver, Nelson, that can put teams over the top in these championship rounds right now and bring it home?
DK Metcalf.
Ooh,
it's a good one.
Ooh.
He's going to be another one, Nelson. That we talked about Jefferson earlier. If you get a Jefferson team in, well, Waddle and your boy right there,
DK
and DK.
Yeah.
You get those teams in, they can blow up the last month of the season.
Yeah, I think he showed last week that he's had a down year, and I think that's because of Geno. Geno's regressed a little bit, but I think he showed on paper in a tough matchup that he can put up monster games. So he would be my vote. That I could potentially see him being a difference maker because he's, like Chris said, he's probably going to be low owned in the shootout.
Billy?
I think I'm going to go with Nelson, or who Nelson said earlier, Waddle. I think Waddle's the guy. He could erupt. I hate to say it, but it probably takes a Tyreek injury, or at least he's out for a little bit of the game for him to do something. But maybe not. Maybe they just get in one of these shootouts like they did with Baltimore last year, and both of them go bananas for because they got some nice games. They got Dallas, Baltimore. They got some games that could go back and forth. But I think the Jets are the other one in the playoffs, which that could get ugly quick. But we'll see.
Yeah, I got.
Sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Nico Collins. I think with the Tank Dell injury, that might push him, into just alpha status, and be interesting what can happen when Stroud really locks on somebody.
Can't give me any opportunity to shine tonight, Dan. Not even one. Just a Nico Collins as the guy.
I could have gone with my other guy.
I talked about my beautiful Nico Collins trade earlier. Come on.
Yep.
Sorry, Chris, you were saying?
Dan, you stole mine also, Nico, but I had three. Nico, Michael Pittman, and Zay Flowers. I think Zay Flowers is in store for a huge December here in Baltimore. We saw it right before the bye week. So those guys with Gardner Minshew under center here, we just saw the big blow up game from Pittman. It's a dream scenario for Pittman down the stretch here with Minshew at quarterback. So those three guys would be my answers to carry some teams out of nowhere.
All right, we did Dan. We did 3 of the 4 positions. I mean, that's pretty good. We got five on the screens. When you have 3 legends in the house, you gotta let everyone spread their goodness. So hopefully you guys were helped by this. At those 3 positions, you can figure out tight end. Dan, I done all out tight end shows just recently. So go check that out.
Yeah, you can figure it out. It's been shit. You'll figure it out.
It's easy. You just put in Kittle.
Not the answer.
Just pray that you picked up Trey McBride. There you go.
Trey McBride,
you're rich in 3 weeks.
You're good. Exactly.
You're rich in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Everyone streamed Jawan Johnson last week with a goose egg. But you'll figure it out.
Brutal.
Don't. Why are you throwing Dan under the bus like that? Because you want to start Jawan? Come on. Why?
Hey, my other good answer was Kate Otten.
Yeah,
True.
He would have been better than Jawan, right?
Oh, well, no, 0 and 0.
0 and 0. Yeah, 0 and 0.
Both big
The answer at tight end
zeros.
is easy, boys. It's Laporta. We've already discovered that. We've already addressed that. I want to let's go around really quick. Michael Rasmussen has a question. I think that's interesting. We talked about running back earlier. Oh, got the wrong one. There we go. Billy, what are we doing with Breece Hall? We talked, with the Jets, how disappointing, Wilson and so on. Hall, is there any hope? Is he like you're just hoping RB2, low RB2, or is he just?
I mean, the bottom line with him is he has to bust one from outside the 20-yard. Like, it's that offense is so bad, he's just gonna have to bust the one to do anything. He's getting 4 or 5 catches a game, but it's for like 4 or 5 yards a catch. So you're talking 5 for 25 or something. And then, he's getting like 40 yards on the ground. They get behind so early. It's just the offense is just so bad. I mean, I'm sure you're in a position you probably don't have anybody else to put in there, so you got to play him. But if you have an option, I got a buddy of mine who has an online team that's really, really solid in my opinion, and he's got him as his 3, but he's got Nico Collins. It's either him or Nico Collins every week, and I'm like, playing Nico. Just put Breece on the bench.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just
Maybe upside.
That's a no-brainer going forward.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think I wouldn't feel great about Breece going into this. Let's put it that way.
Yep.
Let's
totally
go to 818-SAY. Who should I sit Kyren Williams, or Mostert? I think just based on what we talked about, would we all agree Kyren's got to be in your lineup?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
Dan, we know not to sit Kyren, right? We've learned that. We can
Yes.
move on now.
Well, it's probably a tough decision this week because Kyron's in Baltimore against a tough run D, and as much volume as he's getting, Mostert's at home as a 14-point favorite against Tennessee, who just lost their run stuffing all pro D linemen. So going forward after this week, it's a no doubter in mine, but I think it's a valid discussion for this week.
Are you playing Mostert there, Chris?
I'm still going Kyren.
I never say Kyren. I never say Kyren. I mean, you can't. Because he's a weak winner. When you have a week, so is Mostert. Like, don't get me wrong, he's giving you those weak winners this week. But you got to think A-Chain comes back, he takes over. Anyone disagree with that?
Yeah, I think the problem mostly with Mostert is just the fact that A-Chan is back, and that's going to suck some of the upside out.
We got a question from Mr. Smith before we kind of close this out. Worth trading for Schultz or just run with Taysom, Higbee, Mayer, and Hunter at tight end for the playoffs for a contender in a 12-team PPR? Tight end premium tight end P is 0.5.
Is that Hunter
No.
Henry, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
I think it's got to be.
Oh shit!
I mean,
Taysom is like, if I could get Taysom at tight end, I think he's like a cheat code.
Mhm.
Yeah.
He's like locked in. Like,
And isn't Carr hurt?
I can't think of 5 tight ends that I want over Taysom.
I think that's the
Yeah.
move.
And Schultz is coming off an injury too, so it's
well, if Schultz is healthy, like Schultz could literally like double or triple Higbee, Mayer, and Hunter Henry combined.
right.
Like seriously.
Absolutely.
All right. You guys have been great in the chat. This has been great, guys. I hope I know I learned a lot. I hope you guys learned a lot. Nelson, we'll go around the clock here. Nelson, just remind the peeps all your goodness that you put out there in Fantasyland, where they can find all your articles, all your goodness. I know you guys are going to go even past the end of the season, and in the off season, you guys go hard all year around. Let the people know where that is, and then we'll pass it to Chris.
I'm at FTN Fantasy, and I do the high stakes package. And if you subscribe to that, you get access to my rankings in the off season during draft season, and then also with the Discord chat. So that's a big thing too. A lot of the subscribers seem to be engaged in that. They enjoy the 24/7 access. Talk about lineup calls, waiver wire pickups, and trades.
Awesome. Guys, check out Nelson. The high stake package is definitely well worth it. You guys come out with it like pretty early too, if I recall.
Yeah.
Chris, how about yourself, man? Crushing it over there with your Nando DeFino. And,
Yeah, you could catch me and Nando right here on Player Profiler every week. The Fantasy Empire show on Wednesdays, and I'm over at The Athletic. My article comes out every Thursday, and on Twitter, Chris Picaro GST.
Awesome. Billy, always a blast having you. I think all of you guys have been on here on the district a few times now, but we appreciate you guys hanging with us tonight. Billy, at BillyWaz88. Where else can the peeps find you?
In my classroom at school, mostly.
Nice. Nice. I like it.
Or in the gym right now because basketball season started. That's where I'm at pretty much all the time now. So I'm not as well versed as these two tonight. I'm the donkey of the group right now. So
Not
So
at all.
humble.
Not at all. Look at this teacher, just such a humble.
yeah, I'm no hero. I'm just a teacher. I'm no hero.
Just saving kids' lives on the daily. That's it. Just raising your kids. Dan, remind the peeps where they can find the overhyped sleeper out there in the X machine. You're definitely one of the best follows.
Yeah, so I'm at Overhyped Sleeper, as you see on the screen. Drop the final leaf from Sleeper. You can catch me here on the GOAT District on the Player Profiler Network on Tuesdays, and a lot of times on Thursdays. We do a Thursday tailgate. which is always a lot of fun as well. And, I'm definitely one of those people. If you got a question, just, hit me up in the DMs. I will pretty much always answer it. So, you got any strategy questions or anything else, feel free to drop them by.
Yeah, Dan's definitely great for that. That's, when we met initially was me just asking FFPC questions about the live drafts, and Dan was the only one answering me. So we ended up chatting. But you definitely want to reach out to Dan and any of these guys, man. Make sure you're following them. They definitely drop tips and, links to their great articles and so on out there in the X machine. Smash the like button, guys. We appreciate you guys hanging with us. Like Dan said, check us out on the GOAT DiSTRiCT YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe there. You're subscribed to our podcast, the GOAT DiSTRiCT. Check us out on Thursday at noon. Myself, the Hairy Snowman. Dan jumps in every once in a while, and we do a deep dive breakdown on the Thursday night game to help you guys out with your lineups. Crush this week, guys. Week 14, important. Make sure you're active on the waiver wires tomorrow night. You're making sure you got your depth, your lineup, your backups, all that kind of stuff. And good luck in this very crucial and important week 14. We appreciate you guys, and we'll check you all later.
GOAT DiSTRiCT, the Pope listens. Dynasty, our religion, for the blokes missing. On all of these trades, on all of these plays, on all of these grades. By the end of the day, y'all getting played. So, what you gonna do next? Try to fill up that flex? Send the homie a text? That trash offers the best? You try to make it complex, then they text you back. Now all of a sudden, they don't make any sense. Broaden your horizons, boy. Dynasty's not for the Simons, boy. These trades not for consignment, boy. Respect your opponent, y'all some piranhas, boy. This my advice from me to you. Open up your cute little podcast queue. Search up GOAT DiSTRiCT, my dude. Pop it in your ear, man. Y'all know what to do. It's the and I always be traded. And I always be traded. And I always be trading. Y'all try to betray them, but first you gotta bait them. Fish.